So now let's go ahead and put together this structure here. So we have at the top here where the question will be, and then we have these radio buttons here, but these radio buttons are going to be up to 4 of them. So we are going to dynamically create them as the questions come in. All right, so right after our dotted line, I'm going to put a column here, and inside of this column, I'm first going to add a text, right? This text is going to be, for instance, so our text here, we're going to add something like what's the meaning of all this? Okay. A little bit too philosophical, but it's okay. All right, so let's go ahead and make it or add some sort of style. So let's say font size. At this point, I want to be about 17 SP, and font weight, I want this to be bold, and line height, this text, I'm going to be 22.sp like that. Okay, so that is something that would look like this. Let's see. All right, there we go. Looks like that. Not exactly what the color is off. That means we have to change the color. So I'm going to say color. App colors and off white like this. Okay, that looks really nice. And of course, we know that the immediate argument we can pass here is a modifier. So I'm going to pass a modifier. I'm going to have a padding of about 60p, and then alignment. I want to align this text. I'm going to pass an alignment. Let's say alignment as such, alignment Android X. I'm going to say start. So I want this to say start from the right. That's good. And I want fill max height, but I don't want this to be all, but we don't want this text to take up the entire space we have here. So the great thing about, if you look at fill max height or fill max width, if you hover over, you will see that we can pass the fraction float here. This is really great, because if you look at parameters, fraction is the fraction of the maximum height to use between 0 and 1 inclusive. That means if I pass something like this, I want this to be 0.3 fraction of the entire height, right? What we're really doing here is that we want about 30% of the height of the entire screen, right? We want to say fill max height. So this is what we are going to have. This is the space we're going to allow for the question text. Because remember, this question text here could be very well very small. Let's go ahead and refresh again. Right? You can see the question could be very small, not a lot of, well, actually this has a lot of text, and others are very small, like this first one here. So we want to accommodate that. We want to make sure that if indeed the question has a lot of text, then we are able then to accommodate that as well. So right immediate to that, that means we have our text. Then we're going to have this space where the text, depending on how large the text is, it's going to be accommodated. But right after that, we're going to have the section where we're going to have these radio buttons. Like I said before, the concept here is different in that we are not going to hard code the answers, or in this case, the amount of buttons or radio buttons. Because if you look at the answers, the most they can have, the choices I should say, most we can have are 4. But in cases where we have false or true, we have just 2 choices, right? So what we need to do is, for each question as we receive it, we want to draw these radio buttons on the fly dynamically. So if it goes and gets this one, this question, for instance, this object is going to go and say, okay, choices is just 2. So we're going to draw, as you see here, only 2 of these buttons. If, on the other hand, we have a question such as this and they have 4 choices, then we have to draw 4 choices, also adding all of these choices there. After our text here, I'm going to just say choices. We have to loop through the choices array or list and get the number, and then draw the correct number of choices we have. So what we need to do in our question display here, we need to pass a few parameters. The first one is going to be the question item. So I'm going to say question item as such. I'm going to have some issues here with our preview, no problem. I'm going just to get rid of that for now. And then I'm going to pass here question. Let's go ahead and import that, of course, question item. And then I'm going to pass here question index, which we will look at in a bit. So question index, it's going to be a mutable state, pass of int type. Okay. And then of course we're going to pass the view model, which is going to be question view model. And then we're going to have the on next clicked, because we want to be able to say that, okay, when this is clicked, we're going to pass the value of the question that was just clicked. So in this case here, we're going to be passing the actual question item when we hit this question display, because we want to be able to get that question, which is going to be this object, which is going to have question, answer, and the choices. So we have that object. So now we have to go and loop through these choices so that we can decide what to draw on the screen, right? 2 or 4 radio buttons. So the question here is what drives everything, which means then we need some sort of state. Because remember, if I want to be able to dynamically draw those choices, I need to have some sort of state to draw these screen whenever it needs to be drawn. Meaning, if there's 2, then we're going to draw 2. If there's 4, we're going to draw 4. So that just tells us we need some sort of state. So right here, choices, say choices, as such, state, that's fine. I'm going to use remember because we need to be drawing something. So remember will allow the recomposition, really. I'm going to say question, actually, for our choices state here, I need to pass a value to compute, which is going to be our question object that we're going to be passing this question item there, right? So inside here, I'm going to say question item, in this case, dot choices, choices as such, and I'm going to say to mutable list, because remember, this is indeed a list. We want to make it a mutable list so we can work with. Very good. So now that we have that choices state, we can loop through it, which means right here, I'm going to say as follow. I'm going to say choices state as such, okay, for each. And I want the for each index because I need the index for each item that I'm getting. Okay, you'll see later why. So I have the index and then I have the actual item. So I'm going to say answer text. You can call whatever you want, but that works. And then here is where I'm going to create a row. So in this case, I'm going to create this row for these buttons here. So let's pass a modifier. Give a padding modifier dot padding about 3 dp. And then I'm going to say fill max width. And then I'm going to give a height. Oops, that's going to be after there. Of about 45 dp. And while I'm here, I'm going to give a border, right? Because I want to create this structure, this nice border there. All right, so the border, I'm going to pass the width of this border about 4 dp. And I'm going to pass a brush object there to around so that we can actually create a nice linear gradient here. I'm going to say brush linear, let's say brush dot linear gradient as such. And so for our gradient here, I'm going to pass colors as a list like this, and I'm going to say list of, I'm going to say app colors that m of dark purple, and then app colors m of dark purple again. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm just going to create the same gradient using the same color. That's why you have something like this. Let's put this in a new line. All right, and then I'm going to add a shape. Just get rounded. I'm going to use a rounded corner shape and pass about 15 dp. And then what I want to do, I want to clip with a rounded corner shape as such. And I'm going to say top end percentage, or top start percentage. I'm going to give a 50%, and top end percentage also 50%, and bottom end percentage the same. Bottom start percentage, yes, you guessed it, the same. But as it is right now, we would have this nice round user interface there. However, it would all be covered in the same with the same color. What we want to do instead, we want to make the background transparent, but only show, of course, this brush that we added there, right? This width, this stroke there. So outside of our clip, we finished our clip right about there. You can see because this is now highlighted. I'm going to say enter dot, and I'm going to say background color. I'm going to make color that transparent as such. Okay, so we're making good progress, but in the next video we are going to continue here, and hopefully by the end we're going to see something like this at least.